Hey everyone, this is Alec, and in this series of videos I will be showing you how to construct control cables for your custom motorcycle or your stock motorcycle, either one. Incidentally, we sell these kits on our website, revivalcycles.com, so let's do this. This video is step one, the construction of your cable and housing. For demonstration purposes, we'll be making throttle cables, but clutch and brake cables, the principles are the same, with just a little bit different practice. Unless these parts are made specifically for your motorcycle, whenever you replace your throttle or your clutch perch or your brake or even your carburetor, sometimes you're gonna need to make a brand new cable for them. Now, before we start, it's important to know that making these things takes some sort of level of competency. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to make these things, but just understand that the cables that you make for your motorcycle are very important as far as not breaking, long lasting, because when things like these fail, you could be in all sorts of danger. These are very critical components for your motorcycle, so you shouldn't skimp out and buy cheap stuff. We've actually teamed up with Vinhill UK. They've been in business for over 40 years. They're a benchmark for quality, and the kits that we provide meet their super light specifications. So since you are making custom cables, there are going to be instances where you might need to modify these parts slightly, but in these cable kits come an array of different nipples and ferrules and all these things to work. But like I said, some parts obviously don't match up directly, so you might need to do slight modifications. The kits we offer will work with a vast selection of models, but there will be situations where you'll need to use model-specific cable components. So you either need to source those to work with the new cable kit, or you can steal the old ones off your old cables. While these kits are universal, that's not to say that they work for every make and model out there. For example, Harley Evos use a very specific brake and clutch cable end that we can't provide in this kit. Another important thing to know is do not reuse your old cable. Even if you need to steal parts of it or shorten it or whatever you need to do, just throw that old cable away. Once the cables get any sort of grime, corrosion, anything inside the cable themselves, it'll make them almost impossible to solder. And without a good solder, they're gonna break. There are a few different ways to make cables, but we make them in a way that produces an OEM quality cable. So these are the essential tools that you'll need. Eye protection, of course, a hydraulic cable lug crimper, cable cutters, a hammer for setting ferrules and bird caging, a bird caging tool for preparing cable ends, a vise for actually holding the bird caging tool, flux, solder, a soldering pot, a pick, cable lube, and a file. Establishing cable length. Place the pre-installed ferrule end of the cable housing into the throttle mechanism. If it has an adjuster, make sure it's fully in. Then identify where you wish to place your mid adjuster if you choose to have one. Route the housing to its destination, being sure to provide enough freedom to avoid binding or unintended actuation when turning the bars or being pinched under the tank. Cable routing from the bars will generally arch to the opposite side of the bike and follow along the frame. If you have any questions, just refer to your manual, or if your cable's still on there, just see how it's routed. The next thing you want to do is trim the housing. Use your pick to reshape the housing and clear any debris. Fun tip, remember to measure twice, or better yet, 3 times. If in doubt, always err on the side of too long. You can always trim the housing before permanently attaching your fittings. Make a cable end at the carburetor and cut to the approximate length. Pre-assemble the cable with all of its bits and pieces. Install the pre-soldered end and install it onto the bike. Slip the loose nipple onto the cable end and mark both sides of the position of the nipple. When soldering, you'll be exposed to molten metal, fumes, and lead. Lead is particularly toxic, so use the proper eye protection, hand protection, work in well-ventilated areas, and when you're all done, make sure you wash your hands very well and clean up everything as best you can. Use fine grit sandpaper or emery cloth to get all the oxidation off the cable end. Once that's all gone, clean the cable end and the brass nipples of any oils or contaminants. Next, ball the end of the cable to trap the nipple onto the cable itself. The best way to do this is to use a bird caging tool to compress the end of the cable, making a cage that will trap the nipple onto the cable and will fill with solder to further strengthen the cable end. We use the Vinhill bird caging tool. It might be a good idea to practice on a loose piece of cable at first just to make sure you don't ruin the new cable that you're making for your bike. Slide the nipple down the cable so that it rests on the bird cage. It should sit nicely inside the cup. Dip the end in the flux just over the top of the nipple so that it is completely submerged. Solder will only flow where flux is applied. Avoid wetting the cable above the nipple. If you do that, the cable will lose its ability to bend and lead to premature failure. So what is flux? Flux is basically a cleaning and adhering agent. It's mildly acidic. It cleans materials of dirt, oils, any sort of contaminants, and it actually helps the solder flow. And while it's cleaning and the solder's flowing, it helps adhere the two pieces of metal together. Dip soldering involves the use of a pot of liquid solder to bathe the cable end. After the cable end is dipped in flux, it is dipped in the solder and held for approximately 10 to 15 seconds, allowing the cable end to come up to temperature and the solder to flow into all the crevices. We recommend using 6337. That's 63% tin and 37% lead solder with a melting point of about 183 degrees Celsius. Dip the soldered nipple in water to cool it and to dilute any residual flux which is corrosive if left. Dry using a paper towel or a rag. Use a file to clean up and smooth any inconsistencies on the surface so that the nipple can pivot in the seat as needed. Clean up your work area, dispose of debris, and for God's sakes, wash your hands. If possible, take note of any original cable routing. This will usually be the path of least resistance. Check that the overall lengths correspond to the original cable. If you have changed your bars, lever, or throttle, matching the OEM lengths may no longer be applicable. Before final installation, hold the cable assemble up vertically and apply lubricant to the inner cable. Route the new cable following the path of the old cable. If cable ties are needed, be sure to allow enough room for cable movement. Make sure that the handlebar movement is not restricted. Install the carb end first. In other words, the control side should be installed last. For push-pull cables, always start with the pull or open cable first, followed by the push or the closed cable. If a cable ferrule requires lubrication in the lever seat or linkage, use a small amount of anti-seize. Don't use heavy grease. That'll just attract contaminants leading to premature wear in the ferrule and the cable. Once both cable ends are installed, turn the bars from steering lock to steering lock while checking that the cable is not being pulled tight and that the operation is not affected. If there is any interference, adjust the cable routing and check that the ferrules move freely and recheck the steering. Regular maintenance is the key to a prolonged life and performance of anything. But in this case, we're talking about cables. Make sure you check everything regularly, adjust things, use proper lubricants, don't use heavy grease or anything like that. That'll just attract more dirt and create premature wear. For street or track bikes, the cable should be removed and cleaned at the beginning and end of every season. Remove the cable, spray cable lube through it until it runs clean, and don't forget to use anti-seize on all the pivot points and the ferrules and then put it all back together. For motocross or trail bikes, it's pretty much the same practice as I just explained, except now you'll be cleaning them after every power wash.
Now's the time of video where most people ask for money or donations or whatever. I'm not going to ask you for that. What I'm going to say to you is, if you want to see more videos and you want to learn more of what we've learned, and you want to see a deep dive into a lot of these topics, go to our website and buy something. We sell everything from motorcycle gear, helmets, motorcycle parts, specialized tools. We sell lots of things, and they've all taken us years to figure out what the best stuff is, and we figured it out. So go to revivalcycles.com. There's some really good stuff there. Everything from like kick-ass hand grips from Posh to Radiance LED lighting and everything in between. We want to teach you what we know, but this stuff takes time and it takes real effort to make these videos and make them good for you guys. So go support us by helping yourself to the cool stuff you already need. And it helps us because we make a little bit of profit and then we can justify doing more videos. Thanks for your support.